Hello there. So when I'm not here on YouTube or freelance animating, I work at a cinema. Working in the cinema, you see a lot of random animated movies come and go that nobody has heard of and barely anyone goes to see. These are almost always some CGI animals on hijinks with titles like Inspector Sun and the Curse of the Black Widow and Little Eggs African Rescue? Alright then. Wait, is that Dizzy? If these films get a kids matinee screening over a weekend, you might get a couple families pop in to see these as the tickets are much cheaper. But otherwise these kind of films probably just get chucked on Amazon Prime. Never to be heard from again. This month we had this film come up on our poster of upcoming films and it was 2D animated, like hand-drawn animation. I was like, oh, what's that? What's that then? I was really curious. The movie released last weekend, so as everyone else was filling all the remaining seats we had for Inside Out 2, yet again, me and Cherry T gave it a go. We went into this with basically zero expectations, not helped by the fact that we were the only people to have watched this film across the entire weekend. Yikes. However, we were not prepared. This film is absolutely brilliant. Easily the best movie we've watched this year. Mainly because it utterly destroyed us. This is probably the most we have both cried during a movie in yonks. So, here's a list of the movies that have made me cry. Whisper of the Heart and Kiki's Delivery Service by Studio Ghibli. Song of the Sea and the Wolfwalkers by Cartoon Saloon. And we have The Muppet Movie and Muppets Take Manhattan by Jim Henson. I don't know if I can explain those last two. I think it's just like a nostalgia thing. It's just the ending songs in both of those Muppet movies just slay me. In the case of the Ghibli movies, I think it's just like those films are just so inspiring and cozy, and the way they end is so heartfelt and lovely that I just can't help but bawl like an idiot. But yeah, we can add a new movie to this list, this very small list of movies that make me cry. Bit of context for you. This movie is based on a book from 2011 of the same name by Irish writer Roddy Doyle, who is possibly best known for The Commitments. Mustang Sally! It is directed by Enzo Diallo from Italy, who has directed a slew of animated movies going back to the 1990s, including an adaptation of Pinocchio from 2012. This is technically a 2023 film. It debuted at the Berlin International Film Festival in February of last year, released all over Europe and other parts of the world throughout the last year or so, and finally reached the UK and Ireland at the end of June this year. Despite being animated as an English language film and being set in Ireland, we were pretty much the last place to receive this film. Nothing new there, I guess. This movie is a massive collaboration between 7 different countries: Estonia, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Luxembourg, and the UK all chipped in to make this happen. There were so many animation studios involved. Turns out if you want to make a 2D hand-drawn feature nowadays, you're going to have to gather animators from all over the world to help out. And it's a good thing they did, because they got some big pedigree on this thing. You've got people on this movie that worked on the likes of Klaus, The Song of the Sea, Ethel in Earnest, The Illusionist, and it really shows. It's a subtle, down-to-earth movie that requires very human character acting and nuance that is far more difficult to pull off than many would think, and they absolutely nail it. Aesthetically, it looks a lot like the kind of 2D animated films that would have come out in the early to mid 2000s, right down to the obviously computer generated cel shaded cars. But that's not a knock against this movie by any means. I really miss when films look like this. Some of the animation highlights are the dream sequences. The grandmother's dreams are flashbacks to her childhood, drawn in a wonderful rough sketchy style, animated by Marco Saloni, who was also an animator on a bunch of Disney sequels throughout the 2000s. Oh hey, what was I just saying about that era? The girl of the story has nightmares from the perspective of a greyhound. Oh, hence the title. See what you did there. These are depicted in an incredible engraving style by Portuguese animator Regina Pessoa, who has used this technique in many of her short films. I couldn't find a clip of this scene in particular, but Regina actually does her work digitally now, which is super inspiring as someone who's attempted to create traditional looks digitally themselves. The all-Irish cast did a wonderful job with the voice acting, and there's even a few original songs peppered in throughout, which are kind of corny to be honest. They're those kind of songs where it's like, I'm going to do my best, I'm going to do the thing, I'm going to do it really well, blah de blah blah blah. To be honest, this is probably the one aspect of the movie I wasn't overly crazy about, but there's only a handful of them, and these are inner monologue songs, so the characters are not straight up bursting into song themselves, which is a plus in my book. Where this movie really shines though is in its writing and the relationships between the characters, especially all the ladies in the O'Hara family. Mary, the youngest daughter of the family, Scarlett, her mother, and Emil, her grandmother. This film focuses on Mary, who aspires to grow up as a professional chef by entering a prestigious cooking school. She's a very fiery, opinionated child who says, "I'm just being honest," so much it may as well be her catchphrase. Her first attempt to win over the school's snooty judges does not go well, with the grandma going full Karen on their asses. Mary and her grandmother have a very strong bond. They get on like a house on fire. Emil suggests that Mary should stop with the modern slop and try out some good old traditional Irish food, like coal cannon, mashed potato and cabbage. I don't particularly like cabbage. The grandmother hands down an old handwritten cookbook passed down from her grandmother. This was never passed down to Scarlett, as she's very much the can't cook type, and finds Mary's passion for cooking rather tiring, preferring she'd just get on with her summer holiday homework. The dad and the brothers are more or less just side characters, too busy raving about the footy to have much interest in Mary's cooking goals either. To be honest, I'm fine with this because I swear to God, if this was yet another animated film about daddy issues, I'd blow a gasket. We've had about 4,000 of those in the last 20 years. Sorry. Mary also has a fear of dogs. She absolutely hates them. This is also a trait she gets from her gran, who says dogs are bad luck. Things very quickly go south for the grandmother as she drops down with a nasty sickness that ends up having her rushed to hospital, with not much time left to live. At the same time, Mary's best friend from school is leaving forever to move to England. This double whammy of bad news hits Mary hard. When not arguing with her mum and throwing a tantrum in her bedroom, she starts having strange dreams where she's a greyhound. As all this stress and anxiety is bubbling up, Mary meets a lady called Anastasia in the park opposite her house, who somehow knows her grandmother and wants to pass over a message to her. Mysterious. She also knows a thing or two about old school cooking and offers to help Mary out. Also, she real pretty. Anytime Scarlett catches her hanging out with Anastasia, she is suddenly nowhere to be seen. Ooh. She assumes Mary has an imaginary friend as a coping mechanism and takes Mary to see a child psychiatrist. I swear to God, the split second this lady is on screen, you know she's a child psychiatrist. The massive toothy grin, the polite but patronising tone of her voice, her fussiness with how tidy her desk is. As a pair of neurodivergents, me and Cherry have both encountered people just like this. Perfect caricature. Also, she appears to have a very long neck and weirdly short arms. Is she like a T-Rex in disguise? Anyway, I don't really want to spoil too much about where this story goes, but safe to say, this movie goes places. Emotional places. You can probably guess where this goes from my synopsis, but the way the impending death of the grandmother is handled and how all the loose ends of the mother and daughter's grievances are tied up is so beautifully and eloquently done. It really elevates this film into an all-timer for me. The entire final act of this movie had both me and Cherry T just tears streaming down our faces for like the last 20 minutes of this movie. Absolutely wrecked us, completely destroyed us. It's not all drama and tears though, there are plenty of laughs to be had too, including one remark from Mary about Scarlett's cooking that really knocked me for 6. There are some great side characters too. I adore the junior doctor, Dr. Patel. He's so clearly quite new to the job and finds things like announcing bad news to the family concerning the grandmother difficult. He's very awkward but trying his best. I just think he's lovely. Pay him more. I can think of a few reasons why this film resonated with me so well, beyond what was happening on the big screen. For one, I saw myself projecting my own sister and grandmother onto the youngest and eldest of the family in this film. They were also really close, especially during one point in our childhood where for about 2 or 3 weeks we stayed at our grandparents while a kitchen extension was being built at our house. For some reason, that short space of time is one of my most vividly remembered chunks of my childhood. I remember so much about it. My gran also inspired me to take up drawing as she dabbled in painting herself throughout her life. It's been quite some time now since she passed away, but this movie really dug up some memories for me, which probably added to how emotional I got during the ending of this film. And you know, I think one of the other things that made me sad while watching this movie, just been like, man, this is such a good movie. Why is nobody watching it? Why are we the only two in here? I feel like I've just stumbled on a hidden gem here. I don't know how well it did throughout Europe, but here in the UK, I don't think anyone knows this movie exists. Like, this movie needs more recognition. In fact, when I looked up this movie here on YouTube, the only video review I could find was a Content Farm bot basically just reading the Guardian's review. And that's it. That's all there was. In that way, I was compelled to make this video talking about this movie. You need to see this movie. If you get a chance to catch this movie in some kind of matinee, or it's just showing in your local cinema, I would highly recommend it, especially if you like movies by the likes of Studio Ghibli or Cartoon Saloon. It's a lot more down to earth and a whole lot less fantastical and magical. It's just such a fun, cute, heartfelt little production that for me really stands out in a sea of recent animated movies. We watched this just a week after seeing Inside Out 2, a movie quite literally about emotions, but as good as that film was, this film gave me more emotions. That makes sense. It definitely had a bigger impact on me. So sorry Pixar, go cry in the corner with all your money, I suppose. Right, so from here on out, this video is going to head into spoiler territory. So if you'd rather watch the film beforehand, you can stop the video right here. See you later.
Warning, incoming spoilers. Warning, incoming spoilers. Warning.
Right, so if you're here, you either don't care about spoilers or you're one of the cool guys or girls and you've actually watched this movie. In which case, thank you for actually going to watch this movie because it seems like very few people even know about it. So yeah, nice one. As I mentioned earlier, there was a line of dialogue in this film that just completely knocked me for six. So what was it? So somewhere near the start of the film, Mary's attempting to make a nice meal for her family. And the dad's like, oh, does this posh meal have meat in it? I've definitely heard that kind of thing before around families. The mum ends up putting on a spag bowl, just like a really basic tin spaghetti bolognese on, slops it on the table. They're eating this spag bowl, and Mary's like, right, if you gave this to an Italian, they would call it racist. I was like, oh my god, Jesus Christ. I don't know why, but I just did not expect the word racist to come up in like a kids animated movie. Usually kids films dance around that word and try to be really subtle about it, don't they, Disney? So the big twist of this movie, it's not exactly the most unpredictable twist out there, to be honest. I pretty much saw it coming from a mile away, but they do play it very well. It's the one and only element of this movie that's more on the fantastical side. I was deliberately coy about talking about Anastasia up until now for a reason. She's not Mary's imaginary friend, but in fact, she's a ghost. Woo! She knows her grandmother because she is the ghost of her mother. Her real name is Tansy, and she's come back as a spirit to let her daughter know that everything will be grand. Basically, this is her way of saying, you know, don't fear the Reaper. Do not fear the impending end of your life. As a ghost, you can choose who can see her and when, revealing herself to Scarlet when the time is right, and to Imelda as well. I've just realised all this time I've probably been pronouncing the grandmother Imelda's name completely wrong. Sorry about that. A lot of the humour in this film comes from how Tansy is not used to the modern world. Does that mean she only rematerialised recently? Otherwise, if she'd been prowling the earth ever since she died, surely she would have seen things like automatic sliding shop doors and fridge freezers by now? Whatever, I'm probably overthinking it. Also, the dreams Mary was having while she was a greyhound. This was a greyhound that Tansy owned back in the day, and the girl that almost fell in the well she saves as a greyhound was Imelda as a child. The reason Imelda thinks dogs are bad luck is because she thought the dog was biting her, not saving her from falling in the well. Whoa, good stuff. The film even tackles the Spanish flu pandemic and the guilt that Imelda felt for passing it on to her mother all these years, which was the other reason why Tansy came back as a ghost to reassure her that it was not her fault. I really like how this film brings things full circle like this. There is no fat in this script. Everything is here for a reason. I also love the really subtle approach to the ghost stuff. You know, she doesn't do things like walk through walls or fly around or do silly stuff like that. It's a really nice, realistic way of approaching like spirits coming back to see off people that are you know, on their way out, I guess. I'm not very good at wording this kind of stuff, but basically this film executes it incredibly well without being too on the nose or hammy. Even the subplot of Mary's fear and hate of dogs is wrapped up in a nice little bow when the dad gets the family a new pet at the end of the movie. You can probably guess what it is. It's a greyhound puppy. Of course it is. Mary is still very visibly rattled by dogs. Even the sight of this new pet dog sort of spooks her out at first. But you can tell that this puppy is going to squash that phobia pretty promptly. Because, of course it will. It's such a cutie. Anyway, I've talked plenty about A Greyhound of a Girl now. Stop watching me blabber on about it and go watch it. I've spotted an Italian Blu-ray of the film on Amazon, but sadly it doesn't have the English language version on it. I'm hoping the UK distributor Dazzler considers a Blu-ray down the line. Pretty please. Anyway, I'm gonna head off. Bye. Go watch that film. It's great.